right. I hope you're enjoying a few seconds of, oh, look at that. Facebook bailed out on me already. Yeah, well, we're going to continue without you. All right? I put everybody on notice. Yeah. Facebook has become unreliable. They say, unless I have X or Y, so hell with them. I'm not going to bother. I'll let it, we'll let it start and then it'll stop and, nick them. What are you going to do? They have the power. YouTube says, you're good. So, what the heck? I'm going to try to stay, I'm going to try to stay, appropriately. Oh, boy. We're going to go down here to podcast images. And before I get off on a tangent, I sent one of these up. And I said, you know what? We're going live soon. Hurry up. And I had right in there, youtube.com at FAU for best results. I'm going to underline that with a pen of some kind and edit that image. Can't do it in, whoops. I can't do it in this podcast. This is a special folder where I drop the images that I'm going to use in this broadcast. And here's another one. Disclaimers, disclosures, warnings, notices, and cautions. I think I have the topic covered. In other words, we don't give advice, period. We're not this, we're not that, we're not CPAs, we're not, personal financial consultant. No, you get your own. We are just, I'm actually adjunct faculty at FAU, the August University here in Boca Raton, that has roughly 30,000 students. I've had classes there since 2002. And John Harlan put me onto the Charles E. Schmidt College of Science. I wrote a book. I got it published. And I got it published by Pearson Education. Okay, it's the largest educational publisher, maybe in the planet, or at least in North America. And they bought it. They bought it right away. Right away is like 2 weeks. The acquisition editor and I met with John Harlan in his private office at FAU, and he invited her, and he conducted the, I guess what we would call the introduction. And I had in my briefcase 3 prototypes of my book. I didn't have, most people, they write a book, they're academic people, they don't think about packaging and all this stuff. You know what? Bubkiss. I wrote the book, I edited the book, I did 90% of the graphics in the book. That's not a scientific percentage, I'm just, maybe it's 92.37. I don't know. The images that I didn't do, DK Publishing did, and it just so happens that Pearson Education owns DK Publishing, and I found some stunning images from them, which I first, I think 4 chapters. As a total academic, I figured, what the heck, instead of it being like chapter I and chapter II and chapter III and chapter IV and yeah. Now, the first chapter discussing some of the science about digital imaging, I called A squared. The second chapter was B squared. And then I had C squared and D squared. Yes, I mean, that was pretty cute. Yeah. I mean, yeah, what are you going to do? I had 24 legitimate chapters, different tools and things, so. But anyway, here's my disclosures. Disclaimers and disclosures, the important thing. Yeah. But we don't get paid any commissions. I don't really have positions in anything that I talk about unless disclosed to the contrary. How about that for a legal? Yeah, I mean, so some of the guests, well, I guessed, we may be talking about Tesla stock. And the guest that I'm interviewing may own some Tesla stock. I mean, we just disclose it, that's all, So that way, this guy owns it. I don't own any of it. I would, I think it's marvelous. I think it's overpriced, but that's not financial advice. We're not supposed to do that, so we don't do that. No. This is strictly for academic educational purposes, for your sole educational purpose. See number 7? Yep. Mm-hmm. So we got it covered in these 7 thingies here. So, and we gave everyone that was signing on with Facebook or YouTube ample warning, and and some other little things. I should call that A squared and B squared. No, just kidding. So here's, there's, oh wait. I hope I started the broadcast with this. I was supposed to. It's a 10. Come on, it's 10:53 p.m. It's a late night edition. I think I had it set up right. I like to start off with this and end with this. That way, now, if I end this tomorrow, meaning at 12 a.m. or something or other, I don't have a 12 a.m. What do you call it? Because it ain't the 14th yet. Nope. We got to wait an hour and 6 minutes. We're not going to wait. We got things to talk about. The one thing I want to talk about, see this car? Look at this car. I owned one just like this. I believe it's a 1959 Corvette. The 58 had 1 headlight. I think the 59 had 2 headlights. Now mine was not this bluish color. This is a custom color that someone painted it. General Motors, I don't believe, had that color in their repertoire when you bought it. So mine was white overall. Everywhere you see this turquoise, it was white, and this panel was blue. So instead of a white panel, it was a blue panel, and the whole car was white. Yep. And the interior was, all leather and leather colored. It was my father's car. He bought it in 1959, wrote a check. Yeah, he didn't believe in car loans. He'd walk in there and write a check. Back in 1959, that was a little unusual. But my father was an old school kind of a, Russian backgrounded guy. Spoke perfect English because of my mother. She taught him how to read and write, so to speak. He never got past third grade. He lived on the streets of Manhattan and literally, just worked his early years to just keep himself alive. He slept on cardboard. Yeah, he showed me his favorite place. I was like 13 or 14, spoiled brat kid I was. He drove me into Manhattan. He said, "See, son, this is where I went to bed at night, right there. I leaned myself right up against that little corner, because the wind wouldn't get me. And I bundled up the best I could. The rain wouldn't get to me because of the overhangs. And the way the building was faced, I would be safe from high winds. And you just want to melt because you're such a spoiled brat." I mean, I literally grew up with a silver spoon in my mouth. Oh my God. Yeah. Oh, jeez. He made a lot of money selling steel in Manhattan. He got a job in the name of the company was Irving Subway Grading Company. And they provided all that metal grating that was on bridges all over the place. Plus the L units, the big steel beam would go up this way, vertical, and then it go across and hold up the railroad tracks. Well, you can drive through Manhattan and you see these L's, big, huge, 20-foot high steel beams, and then go across. And they were engineered, so they wouldn't bend, flex, or whatever. Torsional rigidity and all the engineering was done very well. Welding and all that stuff. Steel workers. So he sold all those L's. Yeah, he sold them to the city of New York or wherever it was that bought them. And it was, literally millions of dollars worth of these L's. Plus all the gratings that would, bridges. He sold all that and made a, small fortune. Had a nice house in Long Island. He wrote a check. His car, wrote a check. Cadillac, wrote a check. My brother's car, whatever that was, a Chevy something or other, wrote a check. So I went away to college. This is fast forward now to 1963, 64. And it's time for Jimmy to go to college. Well, I got, so Union College was where I was going. So I went to the first year there and did, okay. 2 A's, 2 B's, and 2 C's for each semester. 2 A's, 2 B's, 2 C's. Yeah. So that's 4 A's, 4 B's, and 4 C's. For my first, 8 classes, it was a semester hours, I think. Anyway, so during the summer, I went back home and I had a job being the head lifeguard at Country Estates Club, where they had a big pool and big L-shaped pool. I think it was, 100,000 gallon pool. So it was good size. 10-foot deep diving section. I used to teach scuba diving. I taught swimming, to 18-month-olds to 18-year-olds. Yeah, that's where I made, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a summer. Just teach, I got paid as a head lifeguard, whatever that wage was. And then I make, a lot of money teaching all these similarly spoiled brats. Matter of fact, they were spoiled more than I was. Oh, God, that's possible. And, so I had one. So we were having dinner one night, and my mother put me onto this, and I said, "Oh my God, can you do this somewhere where I'm not present?" He says, "No, you sit there. We're doing it at dinner. I want everyone to know. There are only four of us." He said, "Bill, give Jimmy your keys." He looks over to my mother and, nonplussed. Buddy, what do you mean by that? My mother's nickname was Buddy. His nickname was Bill. His given name was William. William Henry Wilson. Anyway, my mother looked at my father. "Give Jimmy your car keys." And he had this look like someone just stabbed him in the back. And they weren't jiggling the knife, but it was a nice clean hole right through to, I don't know what. And he's like, "Oh my God, what?" He didn't want to get into any, serious rebutting of that because, Jimmy and his older brother are sitting there watching this. I'd rather be somewhere else. But anyway, he hands over the keys and looks at me like, "If you put a scratch on this thing, I'm going to tear your arms off." My mother looks over to my father and says, "This car is now Jimmy's car. We're going to register it in his name. You go get another one if you want another one. But this is going to be his car. So give him the keys and go, He didn't buy another one. I think he got another big-ass Cadillac, which to me was like a land yacht, but so we had two Cadillacs in the garage. My mother's Cadillac and my father's Cadillac. And Jimmy had the Corvette. I could see my father was not happy with that unilateral decision by my mother, but she didn't take a vote. She just said, "Give him the car keys," and looked at him like, "If you rebuke this, I'm going to tear off your left arm and your right leg, and you're going to look pretty funny for the rest of your adult life." It's this car right there, but not this turquoise. I mean, how do you? Oh God, it's disgusting. Hopefully a lady owns it, or his wife drives it. That's not a very, I don't know, beautiful chrome and everything. There should be like a Corvette logo right in the middle of that trunk right there. I don't see it. I see whatever that logo is. What does this say? Something motor. I don't know. Can't imagine what that little black and white sign is on there. It's pretty stupid and ugly to have it on there. Have that sign inside when you open up the hood. I had it was a four-barrel carburetor. It was not you could get turbocharged. He didn't do that. It was rear-wheel drive. They didn't have all-wheel drive then. That's all I know. That was the car. Here's yours truly with Marilyn. Yep. You look almost okay. I feel all right. So that's a feel all right picture. Uh-huh. Look at these. Somehow these balls. These balls made of some kind of a metal are falling out of the sky in Australia, of all places. And of course, they're a little bit larger than a basketball. I think I was led to believe. And if you look, you see this, it goes into some end where there's some, it leads me to believe this may not be anything that's from another planet, because look at the screw. You mean on another planetary system somewhere? They have 1/4-inch screws with washers and nuts. I, I just, I don't think so. But someone said they cut open this thing and the metal is not on our periodic table. In other words, this metal is not known to us. Now, it may be known to someone else and they're keeping it a big secret. But these balls, yeah. So that's why I'm showing you that. Someone wants to figure out what the hell that's all about. All ears. Well, not all ears, but I have ears. Well, I'm sorry to say that U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham, the former Republican of South Carolina who passed away, over the weekend. I think so. He was 71. He just had his birthday. And he died. A brief and sudden illness. Well, yeah, how stupid is that? Why don't you just say the cardiac. He had an aortic dissection. How about that? In other words, his aorta blew a hole in his aorta. And, that's the main artery that feeds basically your entire body with fresh oxygenated blood. So when the aorta goes, you're done. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't think of an automobile example. And when the aorta goes, you just stop. You pass out immediately because there's no blood pressure into your brain. So there's no blood circulating. It's just so maybe you have consciousness for like 5 seconds. Your eyes close and then there's no more consciousness. You just your spirit goes. I'm not I'm a scientist, so to me, when if something else happens when you die, when I die, which I'm over 80, so that could be any minute. Oh God, I just hope it goes quick. I don't want a bunch of family members looking over my sick ass body while I take my last breath. Excuse me, screw that. Just stick a fork in me on medium rare. That's it. And when your circulatory system stops, your brain is not fed anymore of what it needs to sustain itself. So your brain, it's like turning off a laptop. Everything, Now the question, it's a shame they can't figure out how to retain this, the organic. It's your brain is an organic computers controlling. Just think of what your brain controls all these things. Some things are autonomous. Some things, like breathing and your heart and your pulse and your when you start exercising, your heart works runs a little bit faster to feed the muscles. You don't have to you don't have to turn any dials, it just does it. So there's an autonomous nature to a lot of what goes on in the biology of the human body. But when a heart stops, you stop. It's like unplugging the laptop, like pulling the wires off the battery or whatever. And then, now with a laptop, there's a lot of everything that's going on with this broadcast is, here we go. Here's a full. There's Jimmy. It's like a, what do you call it? Side view, portrait, side view of Jimmy. My little studio here where I have a bunch of, basically, I have one new iPad Pro, which that's this right here. And I have a relatively new MacBook Pro with a, I don't know which kind of chips are in it. Let's take a peek and see. I can, let's see, let's do the about. 32 gigabytes of memory, the M4 chip. That's, random access memory. That's what I used to. They call it something else now, but it's the memory that your processor links up to. I'm looking for how much storage I have. 2 terabytes of storage. There you go. I have 1.38 tetrabytes available. A tetrabyte is 1,000 gigabytes. It's actually 1024 gigabytes. I have a beautiful built-in Retina display, 15.3 inch, 2880 pixels by 864. Anyway, that's I think what we need to know about my computer. So that manages the whole studio, and it's operated with Ecamm Live, ECAMM, Ecamm.com, as a software package that works on a Mac that controls. Because I have video camera here, right there. Fresh 20-ounce cup of coffee, K-cup. I know it's 11 o'clock. A fresh cup of coffee. Not to worry, I'll go to sleep. At my age, all you got to do is get somewhere near horizontal and everything just shuts down. Yeah. Anyway, so I have a relatively new iPad, which I have plugged into a port that's supposed to be a camera. So, I don't know, I hate to use the word, I've fooled the software into thinking it's a camera. I just use it as it's a camera. There it is. So we're going to... so why can't I? Oh, there we go. And I'll add this. All right, be that way. Perfect. So now I have my 2880 screen broken in half to 1440. So I got two 1440 pixel sides. Yeah. Turn up the brightness on this a little bit. There we go. So unfortunately, Lindsey Graham had hardening of the arteries. You know, you always become less flexible. And apparently he had a serious hardening of the artery with his aorta. And yeah, he's he's an exciting guy. He's 71 years old, and is full of you know energy. A good orator. He's a professional. He knows all about international affairs. He knows all about how that interfaces with the United States of America and its military and Congress and the presidency and, all this stuff. And so he met with Zelensky in Ukraine. Got pictures of him shaking hands with Zelensky, like on Friday. He flies home, on, a senatorial jet, I assume. And, when you get up there at 35,000 feet, the cabin is pressurized to where you're like at 8,000 feet altitude climbing a mountain. Well, that's a little bit of a stress and a strain on the human body because you're used to 14.7 pounds per square inch, and you're only getting like 8 pounds per square inch. So everything like expands a little bit. So you got a little extra stress on your aorta. I'm making this up. This does not come from anybody that knows anything about what I'm talking about. But as an engineering kind of a person, where, I was taking apart stuff when I was 10 years old, so it's interesting. He travels. He's, it's a 20-hour flight. He gets home, and the next day he's dead. I mean, it's a shame. Now, if, these senators, particularly senators, and, this is a leadership senator. This is not just a rookie senator that just got elected. He's been elected and reelected in South Carolina. And he just, won his nomination, and he would get, elected again. But he didn't live to get elected again. So it's a shame. He was one of my favorites because he spoke up and did things. He's kind of like Trump in a way, except he's a polished politician with some rough edges, because he can slap you in the face verbally if he thinks it's appropriate. But he's he knows how to say what he has to say without in such a way that you understand, and he's not aggravating everyone else, because there's always people with other opinions about whatever topic you want to talk about. But and he stood up there and he ran for president, and he showed the difference between him and Trump and blah blah blah, but he didn't win the nomination, and Trump won. And Lindsey Graham went back to being a good senator, and he figured out how to deal with an opposing force as president. And they weren't opposing. They found that most of everything they had common ground with, so. But anyway, what I'm driving at is that these very senior people, you got Walter Reed, medical. Tell me he was not diagnosed with hardening of the arteries, and no one listened to his blood cells travel, and the doctor puts his stethoscope and reads all around his, it seems like if your aorta is really hardened, that's going to show up on your EKGs. You're going to see that. And, he should have had, surgery where they could have. No, I don't know if there's a procedure for this, but there sure as hell should be, where they could, do major bypass surgery and replace a huge section of that aorta that was subject to rupture. But, he wasn't diagnosed. What the hell? Don't these guys get regular checkups? Yeah. You ever have any, little tiny bit of chest pain with, such an aortic, they call it aortic dissection. Now, remember in 11th grade when you dissected a frog? Dissected means you cut it open into two pieces. You open it up. Well, an aortic dissection is something you want your doctor to say, if you don't get treated, you're subject to an aortic dissection, which means your aorta is going to burst inside your body and you're dead duck. Because, if you were in the hospital on the operating table and that happened, there's probably a 50-50 chance you'll survive it. If you're already, on the operating table, but you haven't been opened up yet. Because when the aorta bursts, your blood is spilling inside your entire body cavity instead of being pumped around through your artery system. When the aorta bursts, your blood pressure drops and your heart is pumping, but the freshly pumped blood, instead of, being constricted inside your artery system, is just flowing freely. Every time that heart squeezes, there's huge amounts of blood just being pumped into your thoracic cavity. If you were to slice open that patient and, it'd be like a huge river of red blood. Now you can't pump the blood in fast enough to replace that. And then you got to find out, you got to feel around, because you can't see anything and there's a sea of red blood. So you have to kind of to me, it's a bypass surgery situation. So that there's a bypass around that whole aortic situation. And then they got to cut out that hardened artery. Unfortunately, it's the aorta, which is the biggest one. And when that goes, you talk about a flat tire, boom, the aorta bursts, and it's like having a huge gaping hole in your bicycle tire. Air goes out immediately, and you're on the ground. Well, same thing when your aorta bursts, you just fall to the ground because there's no blood pressure reaching your muscles. You lose your balance because there's no blood pressure going to your brain. So you basically just shut down and get in a fetal position on the ground. I don't know. You don't have a lot of time to figure out your position. You're just going to collapse. You just go straight down. And your heart's pumping blood into your thoracic cavity instead of through your artery system. Now, this gentleman passed away, like 2 or 3 days ago. Now, there hasn't been a doctor that has said what I've just said. They come up with all this mumbo jumbo, but this is what happens when you have a failure with your aorta. Or, the aorta is like the main, that's like the main pipe that branches off into, subarteries, and it branches out all over your entire body. Incredible branch system. The aorta goes, you're toast. The heart doesn't stop. It keeps pumping itself, filling up the thoracic cavity with blood instead of blood being forced into the rest of the arteries, because there's a big gaping hole in your aorta, which, it could have been a rip, an inch and a half wide. All of a sudden, it just bursts open. And then blood starts circulating into your thoracic, being pumped into your thoracic cavity, filling up. You just fill up. Because the blood isn't being constrained so that it would be forced into your whole system of arteries. So, I mean, in a bypass surgery kind of a setting, you would have the blood bypassing the aorta so that they could dissect it out, cut it out, and put a replacement, an artificial pipe in there. At this point, I don't know what I'm talking about. Most of this, I don't know what I'm talking about, but you get the drift. It's really not rock. I mean, it's highly technical. Excuse me, I just banged my SM7B, my magical microphone from the Shure company, who pays me nothing for mentioning any of the hardware I have here. This is the SM7B is, a magnificent device which is able to pick up the way I sound and pass it on to billions of people all over the world. There's only 2 of you listening, but anyway. U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham. Yeah, I mean, damn it. If there's any senator you didn't want to lose, it's him. You think he would be under closer, you'd think you'd have a medical community in the government that would force these guys to have full checkups. You can't force a guy on an operating table, but this was preventable. He didn't need to die from this, I don't think. 71 years old? I mean, God damn it. I'm really mad. If I had a clear channel to higher level people in the U.S. government, I would say, shame on you, Walter Reed. You mean to tell me you didn't diagnose this last year? You don't get hardening the arteries, in 90 days. It takes years of I don't know what. I mean, I'm not going to call it any kind of abuse, but this is the big mouth that's talking right now. I got my glasses on. Yep. I'm shaved to about 3 millimeters. I'm not clean shaven. I have 3 millimeters. And some of them are missed, and it looks like a 7 millimeter one. You do your shaving thing, and those babies are lying sideways. You can't miss. There's my lovely Marilyn, who is sleeping, I think. It's Monday, yeah. She's got a busy day tomorrow. I have this package I have to return. I really should I should take the car, take her to work, and then wing my way back to, I think I have to do that. get by the post office. It's like a $220 package of crap I don't even want. I don't know how it got ordered. I told them I got an RNA number, return authorization. So I'm going to send it back to wherever I'm going to send it. I'm going to have it. It has to be United States Postal. They won't give me a physical address. They would not give me their physical address. I had to deliver it through the post office, which I don't like delivering anything. All my returns are through UPS, United Parcel Service. I don't know. Anyway, but I have to send this back. So we'll see how that goes and see how I get my return money. $200 worth of crap. So I went to my doctor, Dr. Lubin, and this is a summary of what we agreed to deal with. So I sent him a fax saying this is, a medical regimen, a medicinal regimen will largely remain the same, except the prescription for hydrochlorothiazide will change to 25 milligrams twice a day instead of 12 and a half. And please write the scripts for 90-day cycles. I don't want to go back. I don't want to deal with the pharmacy every month or the insurance company. Just ring it through for 90 days. That way, only 4 times a year I have to deal with all these people because it gets very annoying. I mean, it's a waste of time. And they benefit you by charging you slightly less because, there's less man hours having to process all this crap. Because the insurance company look on the papers they don't need to look at but once every quarter. Yeah. And that's A. And B, the Gloria Drummond Physical Rehabilitation Institute is going to visit with me. I'm going to visit with them twice a week for 3 months, I think, to rehabilitate my legs because they have a tendency to swell up. And, so there's a circulatory issue, apparently. So they have some kind of therapy that they squeeze your calves and your feet and, to help the circulation and reduce the swelling. So that begins on the 21st. It's not like, my feet hurt now. I got to wait. Jeez, another freaking week. I mean, nothing's like now. You got to sign up for it. Jeez, they're going to be dead by then. Gee. So I just did my own. I bought a box of this 3-inch wide like Ace bandage stuff, but it's real much thinner, single use. And I bought a bunch of the white cotton mesh. So I completely massaged my foot and my everything below my knee with cream. Let's just put it that way. With hydrocortisone in it, which gives you some anti-itch thing. But but the important thing is to have the cream on there because it's swollen, and the skin is like cracking. It doesn't stretch the way it used to, so it's I'm afraid it's going to freaking burst open and start, hemorrhaging. Anyway, so I completely coated my entire leg with this hydrocortisone cream. And then I wrapped it in gauze, 100%. A whole, 4.5 yard roll of it, 3-inch wide. So that when I put the compression tape on it, that's, fully ventilated. It's like gauze that's a little bit elastic. So that when you wrap it, it compresses to squeeze out the swelling, if you will. And I didn't want that elastic stuff directly on the skin. That's why I covered my entire calf and foot with gauze so that that tape wouldn't be on the skin, which would probably make it like itchy. And yeah, I change the Spanish, like twice a week. Not every day, because it's not, an open wound or something or other where it needs to be changed every day. So I do it, once or twice a week. Anyway, so until I get to my first session with the Gloria Drummond Physical Rehabilitation Institute. And then they'll tell me what to do, and I'll debate with them. I'm a pain in the ass patient. I don't just do what I'm told. I want to understand what I'm being told. You know what I'm saying? Come on. Give me a little, we have to squeeze this a little bit. Because I want you to see what I see. So there's my disclosure statement. Here we go. So I've been working on a spreadsheet. Numbers has a spreadsheet. Numbers is an application that you download. I guess you pay for it or something or other. I don't know the financial thing about numbers. Maybe part of the whole operating system. Let's take a look at that just for the heck of it. So I'm going to go to this magnifying glass, search, press that, numbers, Numbers. What happened? Darn it. Numbers. I'm just going to press the top. All right, there's numbers right there. The one to the right, numbers. I'm not going to hit open. I'm just going to press somewhere, anywhere else but open. And then it talks about the whole thing. Yeah. Plan, organize, and visualize. Yeah, that's what I'm kind of teaching here. So it's numbers for iPad, iPhone, and Mac. Yep. Let's see if they say anything about the price to do it, to have it. Let's do more, see if that does anything. Let's hit more here. I'm kind of like speed reading this thing to figure out. Look at all this stuff. I mean, it's a magnificent application. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I know on Windows they have an application that's almost identical to this. but they charge you. Microsoft charges you for the app. It has like 3 other apps bundled with it. Then you buy it. Maybe I bought this one time. I don't know. I don't see anything talking about a monthly fee. So now here's Studio. So they're adding. See, get. Let's hit the get. Crap. Assistive touch. I hate it. Now, what happened to double click on the side? That assistive touch is totally annoying. All right, it's in a bunch of languages. It's been out there for over 4 years. Yep, that is true. All right. So we don't know about the. I'll tell you where there's another place I can look. I'm gonna go to the settings, and I'm going to touch. I'm going to touch up here where it says Jim Wilson. Just touch the JW. All right. See subscriptions. I'm going to touch that right underneath payment. And let's see if there's. This is all my subscriptions. Apple Care. Apple Care. Apple Care Creator Studio. Uh-oh, what's that? Monthly, annual. What does it do? Family sharing. Oops. It's going, I didn't change anything, so that's just reloading it all. I mean, that could be it. Pay $12 a month for a whole package of apps. There we go. There's my fax. Whatever. I pay this fax. I pay $100 a year. It gives me, instant access to my doctor. I can send him a fax. Getting through with the stupid phone and talking to these people, and I don't know if they get the message or don't get the message. I send him a fax. I know there's a piece of paper in his machine, and I know the nurse that grabs it. So it's worth $100 a year to get access to my doctor. It's terrible, but true. There's YouTube Premium. See that? I pay $21 a year so that you can hear me babble. It's like Scrabble. Stepwise. Yeah, there's that. Shop. Okay. It's 11:40. Anyway, so those are all my subscriptions. And there may be one that has, for $13 a month, that has this along with 3 other apps packaged together. And I pay a monthly fee. I pay $180. I pay $200 a year for that. Yeah, see, here's the View Creator Studio. Also, yeah, so do I actually have this? It says get. So I don't have it because View, it wouldn't give me a get option. Yeah, Final Cut, it's got keynote address, numbers. Yeah, they're really, yeah. Anyway. That's it. That's where you get numbers. You download this baby right here in green. And then pages right below it. You get that one also. That way, you can write letters, you can write books. I did a whole book on pages. Had it published. Pearson Education, yeah. 2003 and 2007. Second edition, yeah. All right, and those are the two magic ones there, numbers and pages. And then I had this Creator Suite, which does not include the two that I'm talking about. Yeah, they try to sell you other stuff, but they don't give you those two right there. Numbers and pages. Those are must-have. Okay, just telling you. It's an academic suggestion. It is not an official advice, because I am not your personal IT professional. Number 4 on my disclosures. Oh God. When the legal department is taking over your podcasting, you're screwed. Anyway, looking just academically, just happening to notice, I already gave you all my disclosures. I happen to, I'm following to see the Dow, and then you see, I need to shrink this up a little bit so you see what I say. See, the iPad has more pixels than the 1400 pixels I've allocated on this suite. But this is like 1800, so I gotta squeeze it just a little bit. So I have this blue extra, as you can see where I'm touching with my finger. You're looking at. It's 11:48 p.m., by the way. I've been on the air, see here. This is an elapsed time, 1 hour and 3 minutes I've been broadcasting. And you can see behind this microphone thing, it's 11:48 p.m. Exactly. And you can see the seconds ticking off. But you can't see the minutes. But you can see the minutes somewhere around, down over here. There you go. See 11:49, you can see it. And the seconds is within 50 milliseconds of the real time with the atomic clock. Apple is very anal when it comes to making sure anything displayed on an Apple device that has to do with time is synced in with the satellites to make sure, because they have Apple Watch and they want to make sure when you see the time, it is the correct time. Yeah. Here's the president President Trump drastically shrinks 2 Utah national monuments. What the heck is that all about? He signed an executive order to shrink. And you got people applauding on that also. All right, let's see if we can get an explanation. Signed 2 executive orders on Monday afternoon that shrank the size of the grand staircase and Bears Ears National Monuments. All right, let's see. 2 orders collectively cut nearly 3 million acres out of monument protection, including 1.6 million acres of land from Grand Staircase Escalante and 1.2 million acres for Bears Ears National Monuments. All right. So it probably has more to do about this land that people can't even walk on that encapsulate these two monuments. So he's shrinking the territory, not whatever the heck. Maybe the territory is the monument. I don't know. If you live up that way in Utah, you probably know exactly what he has done. And, it's trying to give maximum public access to some of these properties that are just been, the government just took over this land and he's basically giving it back. Trump's latest Bears Ears proclamation also disbands the Bears Ears Commission, which consists of representatives from the Hopi Nation, the Navajo Nation, the Udi tribe, Udi Indian tribe. So they're not meeting periodically and charging fees, and we don't need to sit around and because we're going to release that 1.2 million acres. Yeah. And they're going to reinstitute the original boundaries before they expanded it. So it had 12,000 acres and they increased it to 1.2 million. Well, they're giving it back. Bill Clinton is the one that designated 1.7 million acres as the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, 1966. Well, Trump just undid it because that's a huge waste of property that the American people should have access to. It eventually, incorporated 1.9 million acres after some adjustments by Congress. Well, Trump just undid it. President Obama did a similar thing with 1.3 million acres in southeast Utah as the Bears Ears National Monument in 2016. Well, he just undid that too. And apparently the Secretary of the Interior is going through all this stuff and saying, what the hell is the reason for all this? Let the American people have access to this property. Turn it into condos. No, just kidding. I was just wondering. So it would give the American people access to it, but then who owns it? I guess the U.S. government will still own it, but the American people have access to it. They want to camp on it, walk on it. I don't think you'd be able to build a house on it, but all right. I did not mean to spend all that time on that. Let's click Tesla. I have Tesla, SpaceX. I have a whole bunch of the stocks over here that I pay attention to. There we go. Let's spread that out a little bit so we can see the name of the company. There we go. You can see it all. Yep. So SpaceX. It opened at 135 and now it's at 139. So it's right about where it was when it opened. So it's settled down right back where it was. And you can see it right there. Tesla. Now, I am not a financial analyst, but if you want to do your own research, you see that number right? It's right about right where it says P/E, right under volume. The volume 32 million. It opened at 404. Its high was 405. Its low was 391. And then volume going over to the next column, right there in the middle. Let me do a print screen. I'll show you that way. Whoops, there we go. I just did a print screen. Now we're going to, then I'm going to go to the pictures and do a reverse pinch to highlight what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go to photos now. And here's, so now I can, so it's on Tesla. Now this is no longer the app. You know, you touch it and things. This is a print screen of that right there. This is laying right over top of it. But so that I can have you pay attention to a certain part of this, I can reverse pinch. Now look at that. That middle column. Now you can see 32.69 M per million. P/E is price earnings ratio. So if you take the earnings that the company actually did and you divide that by the number of shares, if you get the earnings per share and divide it by the current price, it's 358% of the earnings. The price per earning is 358 to 1. So for each dollar of earnings, it's 358 times that for the price of the stock. That's a hard swallow for a lot of investors, which helps create a lot of this volatility. And what's happening, in my humble opinion, strictly academic opinions here, is that the retail investment community, which means not the Morgan Stanleys and so forth. This is just the people that write a check to buy a stock, not these big investment houses. I don't know how they think. We can find that out some other way, but the retail investment community could balk at a 350, because if you look at a lot of other stocks, you know, if you go down the list, you know, Apple and Nvidia and, you know, Disney and AT&T and Google and you look at all those price earnings ratio of all kinds of different high-tech companies. You know, none of the companies are the same as any of the others, but there is some modicum of reasonableness to the price earnings ratio, and it usually runs, you know, 30, 40, 50 times. So for each dollar of earnings, you know, the stock sells for $30. But for each dollar of earnings with Tesla, the stock is trading at $358. You know, and it's currently at 394, and you wonder why. It's because they're you know, the people that are buying their shares are giving credit for what they're going to do a couple of years from now rather than what they're actually doing. You see, their earnings per share is, here we go, is $1.10 a share. There it is, EPS, earnings per share. The beta, 1.8, that means the stock fluctuates 180% more volatile than the whole market as, the market as a whole. Anyway, so 300, that's 358 to 1 is a real hard pill to swallow. They're talking about the robo-taxi, and they're talking about Tesla's ability to sell robots for a profit, these humanoid robots that it can build for supposedly $15,000 a copy. Which is a remarkably low number. But for mass production, that's what Elon has been talking about. Under $20,000 robot that has all incredible capability. You can train it. You can, it'll talk to you. It'll talk back to you. You can ask questions. It'll answer questions. It'll help you if you medically need help. If you need, a Charles. I'm going to call it Charles. I'm getting one of those suckers. If I live long enough to be able to afford one, I'm getting one. Yeah. It'll be a help. It'll help. When and if Marilyn retires, and I'm already retired, like it or not, and I can have this robot in there instead of somebody from, some lady from Jamaica helping me go to the bathroom. I'd rather have Charles help me into the bathroom. If I need help to go to the bathroom. Right now I don't, but the day will come where I may need help to get into the bathroom. Or whatever. Charles, you take the trash down to the trash room. That's something you can train the robot to do, and it'll go take the trash down to the trash chute. Wouldn't that be cool? This robot-looking thing walks out of my apartment with 2 bags of trash. It goes down to the trash room and puts it down the chute. Oh, God. I can't wait to send Charles down to get my mail. And to talk to the security guard downstairs and say, hello, this is Charles. I live with, in apartment 812. I would have to go down with Charles because I think Steve, our security guy, would say what? You're who? Yeah, that's, I can't, God, that would be so terrific. Or if I'm going to walk the dog, I'd have Charles help me walk the dog. Give Charles a leash. And I'll walk with Charles. And then he can walk the dog. That would be cool. Hey, take the dog out for a walk. Come back in an hour. Don't come back with an empty leash. I mean, there's a lot of things that if you're elderly, it's hard for you to do. And you could send the robot out to do it. Hey, walk around the building 10 times. And then come back and bring the dog back in one piece. Don't get run over by anything. Yeah. Oh, gosh. What a world we live in. Anyway, Tesla stock is not behaving very well. It goes up and down. I mean, the traders are probably making a fortune. They buy it at this and they sell it at that, and then they buy it back and they sell it back at this. And the trading range is, 380 to 420. Well, you go, up and down with $20 or $30 worth of volatility. And every time you make a trade, you're making $20 or $30. And you have a lot of shares or options for shares or whatever, how that works. You can make a lot of money just going up and down. Because it goes up and down and up and down. And it ain't settling down anytime soon. I don't think so. You got the robo-taxi that stories all the time. one of these cars gets in an accident, it hits the news, the stock takes a tumble, then someone writes a good story about robotaxi and stock shoots back up, you know. And then you got the robot part. That's a totally different business. Well, it is, I don't think there's, I mean, I don't think anyone has seen these robots coming off the factory line in any kind of quantity. If, Tesla may be manufacturing these things, by hand, if you will, for its own use. But, as the, I mean, they're working on cleaning out the warehouse that was making Model X's and Model S's. They're bulldozing the entire interior of that big, huge warehouse and getting it set up for. So they haven't finished cleaning it up and ripping out all the, carefully packaging up the robotics and, I don't know whether they bought that stuff or leased it or whatever. But it's a big deal to take apart two lines. They were building cars, 11, 20 or 30,000 cars a year. But I think that's, what do I know? They could have just re-engineered both those cars. Forget the gull wing doors. I mean, I don't know what those things cost, but, just put regular rear doors, so you got the front doors where the driver and the passenger for the driver sit in the front, and you have another set of doors for the back two seats. And you can lean the seats forward so they can get into the third row if there's a third row. But, get rid of the gull wing doors. That's, some, perhaps Elon, had to have gull wing door. It took them 5 or 6 months. They had to delay the line because they couldn't get the doors to close up properly, watertight and all this stuff. I mean, it's a complicated robotic actions for those doors to seal themselves up when you push the button. Open door, closed door. I mean, it's a giant waste of money. And it's one of the reasons why the Model X, didn't sell as much, because there's got to be a few more people out there that feel like I do. Wouldn't you rather spend $15,000 less for the car? I don't know how much it costs for those doors to actually get manufactured, but it's got to be $7,000-8,000 per door. I'll just say 20. So instead of 120, get the car for 100 and just have regular doors. Like they have in a Model S. It's like Sam. So you got a slightly bigger body, a little more luxury. It's on the footprint of a Model S like Sam. The Model X is. And, you don't have the stupid rear doors. And, you optimize it to current standards, of manufacturing technique and so forth. Because, they originally engineered that thing like 13 years ago or 14 years ago. Well, bring it up to speed, bring it up to date, and see if you can optimize the cost to manufacture this thing. So instead of a $100,000 car, it's a $70,000 car. You re-engineer, the battery is going to be a whole lot less expensive. Instead of $15,000, $18,000, $20,000 for the battery, it's $3,000 for the battery. Well, that strips out, tens of thousands out of the cost of the, just re-engineer the goddamn car. Don't these guys talk about that? I don't know. Or they're afraid of hurting Elon's feelings. You know, well, I guess you're going to sit there in front of a guy that's supposed to be God's gift to Earth. If you can't have people saying what they think, I mean, what the hell? They could have saved that line. The sedan, the same way. I mean, it's engineered around a battery that's 1/10 the price of what the battery used to cost to produce, 12 years ago. You don't need that 12-year ago battery design with the cost of the cells the way they were. I mean, everything is a lot cheaper. And now you got the 4680 cell, so you don't have to use this 2170 cell. So you got 1,000 cells instead of 5,000 cells. It has to be, a lot of different if you repriced everything according to modern standards. Get rid of the stupid gull-wing doors. Or if you want it, fine. You pay up another $20,000, you can have gull-wing doors. Otherwise, you're going to open up the door just like the front doors. You're going to have a pair of doors behind the front seats, like every other car's had since, 75 years ago. Not saying you can have it since the gull-wing's all been completely engineered. Just build a pair of regular doors that will fit the opening to where the gull-wings were, so you don't have to re-engineer the goddamn body of the car. You just have a little slightly different door that swings open when you pull the handle instead of this gull-wing thing. That's got to save $18,000. Just saying. But I guess they just figured, hell with it. Model Y is the most popular car we got. So they upgrade the Model Y instead of downgrading the Model X. And it's not a matter of taking things out of it. It's a matter of repricing everything to current factory costs. Re-engineer the pricing structure of the car. And re-engineer some of the mechanical aspects, like the battery system, which they've got a much better battery systems than they had 14 years ago. You don't need the gull-wing doors, which is a huge waste of money. If you're trying to sell a lot of cars, how many people you really think are going to pay $14 or $18 or $20,000 so they have two gull-wing doors behind the passenger seat and the driver's seat? The people that are going to elect that are slim and none. They say, no, we don't need that. I'd rather save the $20K. Well, Elon gave no one a choice. He just said, take gull-wing or buy the Model Y. Okay. I'll buy the Y.
It's 12:15.
It's 12:15 a.m. It's tomorrow. Oh my God. It's Tuesday morning. Yeah. Okay. Dog's hanging over the edge of the bed in here. Got a little roll-up bed inside here. Dog stays with me. It's all right. I've been on here an hour and a half. I didn't get very far. My pictorial. See, I take snapshots of... So we did this so I could do the reverse pinch to show you the PE ratio of 358. Yeah. No. I'm going to hit the edit button, hit the pen, and I'm going to come right here. I'm going to change the pen color to yellow. And I'm going to just circle this whole part right here. There we go. Done. Done. There we go. It's that PE ratio that's crazy. That's the problem with that. Okay, so I said my piece there. Now, if we go to here, look at Apple. PE ratio 38. Disney, PE ratio 15. That's on the low side. I love Disney, but it's for some reason or other, it's not a very attractive. It has all this woke and stuff. They're like, the Mickey and Minnie, are acting like political. Really. There's telephone, AT&T. P ratio 7.26. The yield is 5.25. See that right there? Yield 5.25. All the way over on the right side of that picture. It is a picture, right? No, this is the actual stocks app. So the PE ratio is, $7 for each dollar of earning. The earnings, they're making $3 a share. So it's only two. Geez. So 3 times 7 is 21. What's the trading at? About 21. There you go. But the yield is 5.25%. So you can buy that stock and you're going to get a certain dividend. And right now, based on the price of the shares, it looks like 5.25%. Now, if the price of the stock goes up or down, you're still going to get, the dollar yield. It's not going to change with the price of the stock. So that yield just tells you what the return on your investment is going to be if you buy the stock today at $21.50 a share. Now, if the stock went to $11 a share, that yield would be 11%. It would be 10% instead of 5%. So if the stock went down 50%, the yield would go up, 100%. If that makes any sense. So the earnings per share, the dividends that a company elects to pay is relatively consistent. They don't change that like every quarter. That's something that the board of directors contemplates and based on how the company did, and you just go through all this stuff. So I don't know what the dividend payment is, but if you relate that to $21.55 a share, it's a 5.25% yield. I think that's what it is. Yeah, and you can dig down into the financial statements of AT&T and find out for yourself. But I think that's how that number works. So the actual earnings per share is almost $3 a share. And somewhere here that would tell you how many shares outstanding there are. It's not in this. You can see the weekly high, the weekly low. So we're at 21.55. We're near the 52-week low of 1989. Anyway, if you look at if we look at the price of this stock for a year, so there it goes up and down, up and down. You can see it's near, this. I mean, it's traded up as high as 30. So at 30, that yield would be in the 3s and 4s. But at 20, it's 5.25. At 10, it would be a lot higher than 5.25. You know. So just based on I don't know anything about what's going on with the company, why it's trading at $21 a share as opposed to 30. You know, in March it was November, February, March, April. It was in the 30 range. And now in July, it's down in the 20s. I don't know why that is. AT&T stock still looks like a bargain on earnings. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. AT&T may be left out of the Starlink deal. That Starlink deal is like the direct. See, that would be a shame if they didn't get involved with that, because if it wasn't for AT&T, Steve Jobs wouldn't have been able to even deliver the iPhone. It was a special deal with AT&T that they had AT&T chips and there was a lot of support. I don't know what that means exactly, but when you got a communications company like AT&T helping you support your brand new whole, I mean, there wasn't anything like an iPhone, 20 years ago. We had flip phones. I had a Bold. I had a BlackBerry Bold. That's what I turned in for my iPhone 4 back 15 years ago. I love the BlackBerry Bold. But I also like the idea of the Apple 4-inch screen that was, improved. The original screen was, in my opinion, terrible. But after a few years, Apple, engineers were working with the people that make screens, and they made them better after a couple of years. The original screen was, I couldn't use it. I had a couple friends of mine that had them, Oh, we got it the first iPhone. I said, well, let me try it. Let me try to send myself a text message. I couldn't get it to, type anything. I said, how do you get this thing to work? So then the screen just wasn't, the screen technology is, obviously over 15 years, it's gotten terrific. Anyway, but the marrying, so to speak, of the technology of AT&T that would be utilized as the cellular system, because you had AT&T cellular towers and all this stuff. I mean, you got hundreds of billions of dollars invested in these towers all over the United States, and they were going to permit its transmit. These are transceivers. So you got transmitting frequencies, you got receiving frequencies, so that you can hook up into the towers and make phone calls. That's, they're like little transmitters and little receivers. Just, like ham radio operator, except you got these transmitting and receiving, and 600, up to 600 different channels are available in case you had a lot of population all getting on the phone at the same time. Yeah. There are 600 different frequencies that the iPhone can partner up with on each cellular tower. You'd be riding down the highway at 70 miles an hour. And every couple of minutes, it's switching to new towers as you drive south on I-95 or north or whatever. And the towers switch in the background and never interrupts the call. You don't even know that's going on. It is, though. you're not stuck with the same tower stretching out, over 20, 30, 40, 100 miles. Each tower, I think, only goes, I think the range is only a couple miles. Then it has to switch to the next closest tower to you. Yeah. All that's all computerized and automated through the AT&T. I'm AT&T. Everything I got here is AT&T. I don't have a Verizon anything. All my iPads are connected with AT&T. I have the chipsets. All the these are old iPads, but they still have the AT&T chipsets in there. I can take one of these iPads to a local coffee shop and get connected into the AT&T system, or hop off and use their Wi-Fi. If you're doing if you're transferring any money with your bank accounts, use the cell system. Don't use Wi-Fi, because you don't know who else can be listening in on a Wi-Fi. But AT&T has spent a lot of money to make sure no one can listen into your phone conversations. That's a huge violation of your privacy rights. Well, AT&T has made sure can't is a 4-letter word. Can't? Really? Are you really sure? Can't? Yeah. Highly unlikely is the better terminology. Yeah. Well, I'm sure AT&T is all over Elon Musk's people to try to, make sure they have a piece of the Starlink. I don't know what that means. What kind of contributions these other cellular providers, Verizon could be say, hey, I'll come in, but you can't have AT&T come in. There may be a lot of elbowing, what I call elbowing. But, you got to, if it wasn't for AT&T, there wouldn't be iPhones. And they're trying to make a deal where they call it, you'll hear these 3 letters, this acronym, D, like direct, T for two, and C means cellular. Direct to cellular, DTC. The Starlink satellite system wants to be able to connect to your cell phones directly without going through anything else. So if you're in the metropolitan area, Atlanta, for example, the AT&T system of towers, the cellular system that handles your call for every 1.5 miles. And if you drive 1.5 miles north, south, east, or west, it's likely going to switch to another set of towers. And you never know it. It's instantaneous, automatic, and you wouldn't hear it in the reception of your transmission or your reception. Remember these little radio transmitters? You don't even have to tell it to transmit or to receive. It senses your voice and it works simultaneously at the same time. So you could be transmitting and receiving at the same time, which, that takes quite a bit of automation to be able to permit that kind of activity. Yeah, AT&T can't be left out of the Starlink deal. That would be terrible. There'd be all kinds of there'd be all kinds of litigation if Starlink was not capable of creating a scenario where AT&T could participate in whatever the hell the deals are with Starlink. come on. Apple has already approved the whole Starlink situation. Tim Cook signed off on it, last month, which was a big deal. You want DTC with iPhones? You got it. Apple's got, what, 2 billion cell phones out there? And Apple is AT&T? And you're going to leave AT&T out of the DTC deal? Are you serious? That can't happen. So hopefully this is just some guy trying to sell, the street is trying to sell articles. They come up with these, what I would call an outrageous headline to get you to click it, click on it, clickbait. And then you see their commercials that surround the clickbait. Yeah, it's anyway. Monday, the Tesla stock went in the toilet, $13 a share. There's too much, uncertainty swirling around. No one's seen version 3 of the robot yet. And it hasn't been priced. So we don't know, what order of magnitude it is as far as how much it costs to make this thing. As Elon and his boys say, at scale, okay? Meaning a whole bunches of them. That's what that means. Like tens of millions of them. So if you scale that up to, what would be the average cost of this sucker with the 23 to, they got 70% of the engineering into the hand. Okay, good. Took a lot of engineering muscle to figure out how to, with the tendons, and they have the same kind of system of tendons that we have in your organic hand. So the robotic hand has got stainless steel wires and cables, I guess. So, the actuators expand and contract in the forearm to make this finger do what I'm doing that you see on the, yeah. And those actuators are in the forearm, not in the hand itself. Just like the hand itself doesn't have muscles to bring this finger this way. There's a tendon that feeds down through the bone, goes all the way up into your forearm. And that's how you can bring this finger in with some kind of energy. Or clamp this, whatever you call this number one finger and your thumb, and clamp those together where there's some pressure there that's more pressure than the pinky finger and the thumb. But the thumb is important. They tried to work with 3 fingers instead of 4 fingers and decided that pinky has a little more use than we thought. And there's so many physical devices that are used to using a 5-fingered hand. And since the robot is supposed to be designed to do things that humans would have normally done, but now you have some kind of robotics. So let's make the hand very similar to what Aunt Louise's hand is like. Yeah. Not weightlifter, butch, but, some regular guy with a regular hand, Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, well, they've pretty much topped off the engineering on figuring out how to make millions of robots. Now, in Fremont, California, they have literally bulldozed the insides of, the area that used to manufacture the Model S and the Model X. So those models have been collapsed. All the robotics have been packaged and moved mothballed, wrapped in plastic and visqueen and crated and labeled and stored in a warehouse somewhere. Because those robotics will be used for something else, assuming if they own it. Because these are high precision robotics. They're not in the trash heap. But they're, now that the robotics have been removed, packaged, and warehoused, now they're gutting the rest of it, making ready for the factory setting to produce the Optimus robot that could maybe produce, 80,000 a month or 1 million a year, these things. So this would be the pilot robotics. So they have enough floor space, which is huge, from where the Model X and the Model S were fabricated. All that's been removed. And the bulldozers have removed stuff and the big trash containers, and they've been trucked out of there and swept, and the floors have been, cemented over with the proper subterranean. The floors are, they're like 12-inch thick floors, or 14-inch thick floors to hold heavy, machinery, robotics, the robots to make the robots, if you will. Yeah. Yeah. It should be very interesting. And, in every part, they couldn't go to Bosch and get motors from Bosch or, in Germany. Everything is, custom designed, and, Tesla has to make all the motors and all the contactors and all the this and that and the cable, everything associated with this robot. They have to manufacture from, from ingots of steel that come in the back door. The body is made of plastic molding, so they know how to do that. They're, they have a building full of mechanical engineers that will know how to assemble, Charles. Millions of Charleses. They have the computer, the basics of the computer. They got the basics of the battery, the power systems, and all that, because they take it right out of the Tesla car. They're going to use the same brain, if you will. Maybe it's going to be an i5 hardware version 5 brain instead of a hardware version 4 brain. Maybe it's going to be a hardware version 4.5. Yeah, but not, I think they have to do that because the 5 isn't ready for mass production. And they're not going to hold up the entire robotics version 3 for a chipset that won't be ready for another year. They can't go into high speed production of that chip, and it takes at least a year from now. They just went pencil, like last month, so it's going to be 2027 before that chip can go into a robot. So they have upgraded the hardware version that's on, and I am now making this up. So if it had 10 gigabytes of memory on board for the memory board of hardware version 4 that's in every Tesla made since March of 2021, that hardware version 4 specification has been enhanced. There is a version called hardware version 4.5. Now 4.5 may have the same basic architecture of that whole circuit board, except they've added, I'm pulling this out of my ass, folks, because I don't know. They may have added like 20 gigabytes of memory. They may have turned up the speed on the processing so that it cycles at, twice the cycle rate as the original hardware version 4. So the number of times the processor goes to memory, and the number, how many times a second it will do that. It might be, so if it was, 100 times a second, maybe it's 1,000 times a second. As I say, I don't know what I'm talking about, but they've tweaked all around the computer system that already works for a billion Tesla cars. That brain has been upgraded now to version 4.5 for the purpose of manufacturing new cars, particularly robotic cars, like Robotaxi. Maybe they're going to use this hardware version 4.5. May as well if they have it. But they don't have to change the big processor. They can just change a lot of the peripheral stuff that's around that processor, which is already in stock and available to, be used. Someone decided 10 gigabytes is enough. Well, now they want 30 gigabytes because the robot needs to have a bigger memory so it doesn't forget things. So it can speak 6 languages instead of 2. Whatever. I think that's what's going on there. Exciting. And the robotics is in the Tesla company. But see, until I believe they're pencils down with the robot for version 3. And then you hear there's a version 3.5, and then Tesla talks about, or Elon talks about version 4. Well, what the hell are they going to be manufacturing here? Come on. I think it's like version 3.5. I think they have version 3 like done as far as so you can see some. But they're probably going to be mass producing version 3.5, which probably has, the brain of the Tesla car with added memory, and they turned up the clock speed, I think is the vocabulary words. So if the clock speed at X, they increase the clock speed 3x, So they can turn up the clock speed without changing a lot of the hardware. And they can add memory by just putting an extra little board on top of the board. They can add things around this whole original design of the brain that's in the Tesla car, so that it has slightly better characteristics, because that whole brain board is going to be in the chest of a robot instead of a car. And it's going to have arms and legs instead of 4 wheels. And, the actuators and the sub-assemblies and, now when you got 1,000 people you can allocate to something like this, you divide it up into sections, and you got people that are in charge of that, and that guy's in charge of that. And, then you got the integration people and the people that bring it all together. And, it's like, that's what's nice about an organization like Tesla and SpaceX. You attract the best, digital and mechanical, and, the best brain power that, that's floating around in the country. And that's not necessarily people that get the highest scores on an SAT. You can have a guy that has a high score on SAT and he can't figure out how to get out of his seatbelt, if you know what I mean. So you get people that are very book smart, but you got other people that are very creative. They know how to take things apart and put it back together, and to think about better ways of doing things instead of just memorizing, So a lot of people have a lot of different capacities for doing a lot of different things. But when you have a company like Tesla that has all kinds of, you know, opportunities, you know, that's all I'm saying. Here we are. We're 2 hours into it. It's 12:45. All right. I didn't get far into my pictorial. I did tell everybody on Facebook anyway that I'm getting ready to go live, and I also told everybody about the seven. This is a good version, right? I tried to figure out, different font sizes and how much space between lines. I give enough opportunity. I mean, the text between this and this is identical. I just changed the fonts, and you see disclosure. It has almost the same width as warnings, notices, and cautions. But here it's a little more, anyway. This is probably better to fit the screen dimensions. Anyway, so I got two different ways. Same text. If you don't recognize someone that sent you an email, don't open it. It could be bad guys. And when you click it, it lets all kinds of worms and viruses into your computer, and it can wreak havoc with all your privacy data, your bank accounts. Don't click on anything that you don't recognize who it's from. Don't go to a website you don't know anything about. Be very careful. Have decent antivirus kinds of software. Norton's been around a long time. Malwarebytes has been around less time, but it's good. Get some good advice on which ones to use, if not both. There you go. There's our buddy, our former senator of this great state of Florida. Now he's Secretary of State, and this guy is some smart cookie, and he can stand in front of the press corps, and they're not going to take advantage of him. He's a worldly guy that, he's hot stuff. I like him. So I assume that's husband and wife. Nice looking couple. He should be the vice president of the United States, not the guy that's there. He don't know shit from China. He's just, his experience is 18 months as a senator. It takes a year to figure out where the men's room is. This guy is an experienced senator. He has jumped into every role that he's been asked to take, and he just takes charge. And they've got government manpower coming out of their ears. So he is an organization man, and he figures how to get shit done. So Marco Rubio he's a Cuban immigrant. His father, the parents, they all came in properly. They're not illegal aliens; they're legal aliens. And America is. You can go right to being on the highest levels in our society, in the society of the United States government, which is huge. And he's in the highest places there is. I mean, the Secretary of State is like, what, third in line to the presidency if people, die off for whatever reasons. I think it's I think it's president, vice president, secretary of state, and the secretary of the defense secretary. I think the secretary of state's third in line to the presidency. Hey Siri, is the secretary of state of the United States of America, is he third in line to the presidency? Okay. As the highest ranking member of the cabinet, Secretary of State is the third highest official of the executive branch of the federal government of the United States. Therefore, okay, I guess he's fourth in line to the presidency, according to this little snippet I see here on one of my iPads. I put my finger on it so it wouldn't go away. That's the bad thing about this. It shows you the answer and then it goes away. Unless you're a speed reader. Oh, geez, it just went away. All right. Because it's, you got the president, the vice president, who's also president of the Senate. Then you got the Speaker of the House. He's third. And then you got Secretary of State. So he's actually fourth in line to presidency. Excuse me. That's why I asked the question. So Secretary of State is, you can get a whole list. I mean, it goes down like 20 people. And they all stand in the order of succession. They all line. I mean, they have people, handlers, that when they stand posed, one stands behind the left arm, and one stands behind the right arm. Then you have, this one, then this one, then this one, this one. I mean, it goes like, so if you've got 8 of them, they all line up in a particular place. They don't just run and get behind the president. They have to be right over the right shoulder, right over the left shoulder, Anyway, to me, Marco should have been the vice president. I think our current vice president is, he's just not. I don't think he's presidential material, quite frankly. And he doesn't have, a rich. He doesn't have good topsoil surrounding his roots. There's not a lot of nutrients in his soil that are in the roots of his tree. Marco has got beautiful black, a lot of gusto. He's got miracle dirt in his garden. That's just my personal opinion, which is just my personal opinion. Marco is not the vice president. He is Secretary of State. He's managing tens of thousands of people, which is good, because that's giving him the ability to know how to do that. Because when you're a senator, you basically manage and you don't even do it. You have a chief of staff that does it. But if you're a senator and you got 20 people working in your office, including all your legislative people, that's it. That's all you're managing. Now, you may be on a committee here and it may be on a committee there, but how many people do you manage if you're just a classic senator or congressman? It's 20, 30, 40 people. But when you're Secretary of State, you sit on top of a pyramid that could be 200,000 people in the Secretariat, with all the because you've got embassies all over the world, and they have all kinds of staff. I mean, there's a whole shitload of people that work for the State Department. Yes, sir. And they all come up through a family tree, and they end up with Marco Rubio at the very top of that tree, that pyramid, so to speak. Yeah. So that's phew. Wow. I don't know if he's, Trump has a mess in his hands now, because if Vance decides to, compete for being president, and Marco decides to compete for the nomination, how would that turn out? I don't know how it turned out. If you had two or three of them vying for who would be the presidential nominee, my vote would go with Marco Rubio, because he has more experience running stuff than Vance. He's not running anything. He's just hanging around Trump. Well, Marco hangs around Trump also. They're almost the three of them are almost inseparable as they travel around the planet. Now, Hegseth, he doesn't necessarily travel around with everybody, because he's got to run the Pentagon and the Defense Department, the Department of War, whatever you want to call it. But Marco, Vance, and Trump, they're almost always in the room at the same time. Yeah. I mean, Trump doesn't want Marco out of the room, because Marco has a vast knowledge of a whole world of things that Vance doesn't have a clue about. And not only international affairs and dealing with, the leadership of, all around the world, of major countries, and meeting with high-level people and all of, everybody in NATO and so forth. Vance, may have never met a lot of these people, but as this guy was senator for 10 years or so, and he was chairman of the International Committee, and a bunch of different committees that he was chairman of, where he had dealings with high-level government people other than him and the State Department, meaning external countries, and dealing with all kinds of international stuff. Vance had no contact with us, just being a junior senator from Pennsylvania for 18 months. 6 months of the time, he's finding his way to come back and forth home with the airplanes, and where the men's room is, and how do you do this and how do you do that. I mean, the first 6 months, you're useless. Anyway, I think Trump's two sons, had something to do with, Marco and Vance were the two choices. Who should be vice president? And
It's 1 o'clock.
I'll bet you Trump said, I want Marco. And the two kids says, you know what, go with Vance. And he interfered with Marco becoming vice president, because he should be the president when Trump hangs up his, his second term as president. Now, whether Marco, what the hell? What an immigration story. Jeez. Now he lost Lindsey Graham. What a shame. Yeah. Well, the only other thing I wanted to show you is I've completely reworked this. Remember, we're into spreadsheet training. I cut off the whole top end. If you can remember, let's go here. You see where I had this bar going along the top? And I had the second row with all the column captions. and I had the, the jackpot and the tax and the net and that. Look how I've simplified this, because I learned a little something. If you win, if you're just a regular Joe, let's just say that, and you win a $637 million jackpot, which has a $278 million lump sum, the jackpot after the 37% tax is 175 million. Now, I've cut out a couple of columns getting there, because who the hell cares what the tax is? The point is, there's the lump sum, and that's how much hits your checkbook after you pay all federal taxes. Now, if you got state taxes, that's you can do that calculation yourself. So if New York State charges you an extra 10%, then you're going to pay another $27 million worth of taxes. So you'll have $150 million in your checkbook rather than $175 million. Now, is it worth it for you to have New York residency? Is it worth $28 million bucks? That's the, if you decide to move to Florida 185 days a year, you save 28 million bucks and make Florida your official residence. So if you're in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, whatever those tax rates are, 8, 9, 10%, 10.5%, that could be a $25 million decision. Is it worth it? Because you just won basically $278 million. Now, after your federal tax, it settles down to $175 million. But if you owe another 10% state income tax, guess what? It's 10% of 27 million, of 278 million. It's not 10% of 175 million. It's not 10% of what? I shouldn't be too definitive with that, because I'm not a tax guy, so I actually don't know. Anyway, but it may the federal tax may go down a little bit because they allow you to get credit for the state tax you had to pay. I don't know. That's up to the legislature. I don't know how all that legislative stuff turned out. I know there was all kinds of conversations about getting the federal government allowing the IRS, in other words, allowing you to be able to write off the interest, write off the amount of state income tax you're paying. Yeah, I mean, they were politicking on that big time. I don't know what happened to the tax code with regard to that, so I'll keep my mouth shut because I actually don't know. I did check, though, on what the officials, what several analysts have. I don't know if they're connected with the lottery or whether they're plugged into getting the number from the lottery, but there was a couple of websites that basically confirmed that with a $637 million single winner jackpot, that the lump sum would be $278 million. And if you divide one by the other, it's 43.643%. So if you take 43% and change of 638 million, 637 million, you end up with 278 million. Yeah. So I updated this little ratio so that if there is a rollover again and the state of Florida then gives us a new jackpot, 650 million, we'll apply that 43.643% ratio to it to come up with the new jackpot. Yeah. I had it at like 45. It's more like 43% for some reason. I don't know what the equation is for determining how the lottery officials determine the net present value of the future cash flows, because that's what it is. We're talking about the NPV. And what percentages are they using to determine the net present value? So you got 30 cash flows. You got 9,588,000 paid on day one. And then a year from then, you get another 10 million. A year from that, you get 10,570,000. A year from that, you get 11,000,000. So if you add up all those 30 payments, what is the net present value of those future cash flows? Well, that should be 278 million. So there's a lot into that number. So since I don't have privy to what that formulations are, I'm just going to look at the prior lotteries, see what the estimated lump sum is, and create a ratio of, in this case, 43.643, so that we get that to the nearest million. It rounds up and rounds down to the nearest million, pretty much. I think it might be the nearest 100,000. I'd have to look at the rounding, but you don't need. I mean, it's an estimate of an estimate. So how many decimal places do you need? If we just get the first three numbers, that's good enough for a conversation, and that's all I'm trying to just display here. This is just a way of displaying this kind of information. It's not an invitation to gamble or anything like that, because in our disclosures, we do not. I'd rather say it's the losing odds. Because there's 290 million to 1 reasons why that ain't gonna happen for you, buddy. You have a 5 times better chance of getting hit by lightning. I think it's better chance than that. But anyway, this is a nice way to present the statistics. I do a cut and paste. That's how I get the black numbers and circles with the red background. I just do a print screen right off the Florida Lottery website, because I don't want to be typing these numbers, because I might type the wrong numbers. I might invert 46 to 64, and then, oh my God, this is being transmitted all over the planet, and it's the wrong numbers. So if I just do a print screen, it's Florida typed the numbers. Now they may have made, they always say it's estimates, and we don't guarantee accuracy. I mean, they got all kinds of disclaimers. They got disclaimers and disclosures, just like I do, because I'm getting the information from them, and they're not promising this absolute certainty. No, they say, "Oh no, it's just estimate. We don't know. We don't know if it's 637 million for sure. It might be a little lower, a little higher, somewhere around there." They don't guarantee what the tolerance is. We just know. We the buying public, well, not me necessarily, but anyone that follows the lottery system, they know how to, when they say 637 million, they have, years and years and weeks, and these draws are like twice a week. Well, they got years and years of experience. God knows how many, draw experiences they have. So they can pretty much figure out, how much, because it all depends on ticket sales. And they know, during the summer, and during the winter, You know, when you get up to like, you know, when you get over $500 million, it creates a lot of interest. You know, a lot of different networks and a lot of different, you know, it's almost like advertising. So when you get over, yeah, you can actually win a $500 million lottery, which produces 175 million in after tax cash. You call your banker and say, "Oh, by the way, sweetheart, there's going to be a $175 million deposit in my account tomorrow." That is not a typo. We have been fortunate enough to win the lottery in the state of Florida. Obviously, I'm making this up. And govern yourself accordingly. Is there anything else I need to do, or you know, I'm just going to use the R&T number and my bank account number, and bam, that's just going to go in there. Now we're going to move money around after it gets in there, but that's going to be the cash that's going to hit the account tomorrow, which I want immediate access to. You got any problem with that? If you can't give me immediate access, we're going to Bank of America or somewhere else. But you're TD Bank and you've been my bank, so you know this is an unusual situation. So I have to be able to move this money around without any interference because you put a hold on it. You can contact the lottery officials yourself to verify this deposit, which is going to be an ACH deposit, I'm told. I've given them the routing and transit and my account number. And that's going to get bam. You know, by 3 a.m., that baby's in the account. And I don't want you putting a hold on it, or else that ain't going in your bank. So you tell me, you want your branch to grow by 100 million tomorrow? Yeah, you probably owe me a lunch. Just kidding. I don't want lunch. I just want no holds on 175 million. We're going to move a certain amount of that money into an account, which you're going to pay interest on. So if I took 50 million and put it in an account, how much interest would you pay? Money market kind of an account, which would be relatively static. I'm just going to live off the interest. What would be the interest rate? Other banks in the area paying 4%. You're going to pay up? If you're going to pay 0.5%, we're going elsewhere. Let me know. I want to hear from you before the close of business today. Here's my cell number. Send me a text before you call. When you're ready to call me, send me a text saying, "I'm ready to call you." And then I'll text back, "Call me." And that way you know I'm not busy or something or other. Can you imagine 175 million in cash? So you're going to, you know, right away, I mean, just think about it. If you want 637 million, you got to accept the annuity, which pays the first payment, 9,588,000 day one. And then exactly a year later, you get 10,067,000. And then a year after that, you get 10,570,000. It keeps growing at the rate of 5%. To the point where when you get into the 30th payment, it's like over 30 million. Yeah. And you add them all up, it all adds up to 637 million. And I think I copied, yeah, there's the end of this 637, you know, like the 30th payment, 29th, 28th. Look at it. It starts off at 9 million something, brother. The last payment is 39 million. The 29th payment is 37 million, 35 million, 34, 32, 30. You know, 5% of 30 million is a lot of money. You know, it's a couple $1,000,000. So when you're compounding 5%, This is a 5% growing annuity. Remember that it started out at 9 million something? Well, your 30th payment is 39 million something. Now, when you add up all the payments, it's $500 too much. So that last payment you have to reduce by $550. That's what that very most right-hand number is, at 550. Because when you add all those up, and remember, there's a lot of rounding going on over the 30 payments. You know, if it's 50 cents or more, it rounds up. 49 cents and rounds down. So when you do that and you add, you factor in the fact that it's 5% growing annuity and you're doing this rounding, we end up with, $550 too much. The 604 lottery, if someone had won that and they took the annuity, and my schedule was the schedule, which of course it's not, because this is just a display. You see, I've got the column, 30, 27, 28, 29, you see that? And this is all pre-tax, of course. And then there's the net present value. It's the sum of all the future cash flows. And what does it add up to? 637 million. Now, in this little box in the very top corner, the difference of the net present value compared to the lottery jackpot, if it's negative, the result is an underpayment, which means you're shorted. Like, see the red? You'd be shorted $240, so you have to add $240 to the last payment so that you end up with a $604 million refund. Positive result is an overpayment. And it basically says all results except for 0 are due to statistical rounding errors. That's it. Anyway, so we're going to go to my updated version of the spreadsheet, because we're trying to simplify it. We're trying to make it easier for everyone to see. Notice I made the aspect ratio the same as I switch between. Here's one that shows 4 different annuity payments, just so you can get an idea what a 5% growth means. So the first payment is $9.5 million. So by the time you get the 4th payment, which is 3 years from now, it's grown to 11 million something. So it's up a couple of million, or it's up $1.5 million in just 3 years. And the next 3 years, it'll be even more than that, because it's 5% of bigger numbers. Amazing. Now watch, when I switch to a mode where I don't have all these annuity payments in there. So now I've just shown one annuity payment. And why did I do that? Because the rest of the numbers, see whoops, get rid of that. See the yellow on top? So when I go back and forth between the two, the top and the bottom are the same height. So whether it's an expanded view or not, as I go between these 3 scenarios, the aspect ratio of the display has not changed. That's on purpose, because it's easier on the eye if I switch between. So here's showing 4 different annuity payments. The $9,588,000 is paid day 1, and then the next 3 are the years following. Second payment's end of year 1. Third payment is the end of year 2. The 4th payment is the end of year 3. And so on. Growing 5%. It's a 5% growing annuity. I've read that somewhere. So now I'm going to swing on over. So now we're only showing the first payment of the annuity rather than, because we're going to have more of a focus on the jackpot, the lump sum, and the amount that goes in your checkbook after you pay all federal taxes. If you live in a New Jersey, New York, whatever, and you want to continue to live there, then you're going to have to peel off another 20 million or so. That might be the year you decide to relocate to a state that has no income tax, like Tennessee, Florida, Texas, to name three. I think that's true. Check it out. I am not your personal advisor. We're talking about how to do a spreadsheet here, not exactly, because with a 290 million to 1 chance that no one's going to win, much less you or me, if you're silly enough to buy these tickets, you have a better chance of getting hit by lightning, I believe. But if lightning did hit, this would be a life-changing event with basically, it was even the jackpot at 278 million, and you peel off 37% tax, it leaves you with 175 million after-tax cash. So it's like 100 million less, but it's after tax. Your tax is 37%. You're at the top of the tax bracket. Thank God you're not in a 50% tax bracket, or it would be even worse. But at 37%, what the hell? 175 million. Not exactly chunk change. A lot of people will go for that 175 million rather than the $9 million check. I don't know. If I was a younger guy, if I was in my 40s and I won such a thing, you might think about taking the annuity. What the heck? 9 million, 10 million, 20 million. Over a 30-year period, the last payment's like 39 million. That's a hell of an income, 39 million. Bam, all of a sudden hits your account. Phew, it's hard to spend all that money. Yeah. Well, that's how you get 637 million. You got to accept the 30 payment annuity. You do get 9,588 up front. That's an estimate, of course. So 5% growing annuity. And the last payment is going to be like 39 million something, if I saw that right. I just showed it to you. Now, the next slide, with the same aspect ratio of this slide, is not going to have the annuity column. And it's just going to show you the jackpot, the lump sum, and the after-tax amount that hits your checkbook. Because you've decided to do lump sum. And it's about 175 million. That's an estimate. Because the 637 is an estimate. Much less how we got to the 278 number. That's an estimate based on the estimated jackpot. I mean, we got estimates of the estimates, so any one of these numbers is not exactly the right number. Then everything, all these numbers change a little bit. But, plus or minus a million among friends, what the hell? But you can see how I got the columns captioned. Because remember, this is a spreadsheet class more than anything else. Now, you notice on the very edge here, we have 31, 32, 33, 30. That's the number of times. So as of July 10th, which is 4 days ago, right? July 10th, Friday night, that was the 33rd attempt to pull these ping pong balls and find a winner. There's 32 rollovers to get to the 33rd week. Now we're July 14th, which is today, tonight, in 11 hours, 10 hours, or 22 and a half hours from now. Yeah, it's at 11 p.m. instead of 1 a.m. Yeah. So later tonight, there's going to be at 11 p.m. today, there's going to be the 34th rolling of this Mega Millions. And they're going to come up with 5 numbers on the Mega Millions ball. And is anyone going to get all 6 numbers exactly the same as what gets drawn tonight, in 22 and a half hours from now? Well, I'll be looking out at it because I'm going to have to add another, So either if someone won it, then the lottery rolls over to 50 million. So if some lucky person wins the 637 million, then the amount of the column 1 here, so instead of 637 million, you're going to see 50 million. So if you see 50 million, that means someone won the 34th rolling of this Mega Million. And you're going to have some happy sucker. Yeah. That's going to be one happy puppy. Yeah. Yes, sir, Bob. Even if your name is not Bob. Yeah. 175 million hit your checkbook. Holy mackerel there. Yeah, you can just write a check for whatever the hell you want, pretty much. Give your kids, give your grandchildren, just roll out all your relatives and give them, 5 or 10 million each just to put the fire out. And then you can figure out what to do with the, One good thought is that the 175 million, take 50 million. Let's just play a little mathematical gymnastics here. Let's take 50 million. I don't know how much someone is willing to pay. If you bought 50 million worth of AT&T stocks, you make 5.25%. And stock prices go up, stock goes down. I mean, how comfortable are you with AT&T? Are they going out of business anytime soon? I don't know. Or you put it in a bank, financial institution. Hopefully they don't go out of business. So that's 50 million. Let's just say 0.04%. 50 million at 4% is 2 million.
It's 130.
So, and divide that by 12, that's $166,000 a month. That's a big budget. So you put 50 million in the side pocket and say, I'm touching that money. And we'll live off the interest. Now that's pre-tax. So take if the tax is 37%, then what your share is 0.63. If 37% is the tax, then 63% is your share. Equals, there you go. So that's 105,000 after tax. It's 105,000 a month. You can live off 100,000 a month, can't you? I mean, that's a lot. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, Phew. I remember you got 175 million. You got 125 million left over, to buy a couple of condos, to buy a couple of new cars, give away 50 million to all your relatives. So at least you 25 million to buy condos and stuff. Yeah, I mean, that's, you sit down with a yellow pad or your iPad, and, go through. We have like 10 relatives. Direct children and cousins and things, not grandchildren, all that. Let the parents figure out what the grandchildren are going to get. Or you can do it yourself, You give the 10 million and give, 2.5 million to each grandchild. Go down 50% as you go down the family tree. Now you're going to have a whole shitload of money when you drop dead, and all that's going to spread to them anyway. But just while everyone's alive, you have to sit down with a trust, a bunch of fucking lawyers to get that right. And hopefully they can write it so it's simply read. Anyway, that would be a fun problem to have, right? Trying to figure out. I had to deal with 175 million. Well, I just told you about doing 50 million of it. So now you got 125 million left over. So with that 50 million you put in the side pocket, that's going to give you 100,000 a month of expense money. That's a lot of. You can't hardly spend that. Travel, food, tips. You walk around handing out $100 bills, whatever. I'd have a pocket full of $100 bills, I swear. And if I went out to dinner somewhere, everybody that had anything to do with what I'm doing, I'd hand them out a $100 bill, period. Walk in the kitchen, hand everybody in the kitchen a $100 bill. Why the hell not? Food runners give them 200 each. I swear to God, I'd have $20,000 worth of $100 bills, and I'd be handing them out like, what the hell? Got 175 million. You can hand out $100 bills for a decade and not put a dent in 175 million, or the 100,000 a month. That's millions of $100 bills, which of course you're not going to hand out millions of them. How many lunches, how many dinners can you have? You're going to eat out almost every night, right? If you have a home, people are going to bring you food. Because you'll have people. You'll have have a staff that'll handle all that stuff. They'll bring you whatever the hell you want. Because you'll pay them to bring whatever the hell you want. That's the whole idea of when you have people. That's the Bob. That's a nice way to. There's the numbers. Someone's eventually is going to, I think Mega Million's gone over $1 billion at some point. So it's not like that's impossible. Look at that. I think we're done. It's 1:35. I'm actually not tired. I might go in the kitchen and make myself a little cup of. I made some outstanding fettuccine. I put a little of my special spaghetti sauce on there and have a little cup. Yeah. I'm going to do that. It's 1:35 a.m. I've been talking for 2 hours and 50 minutes. That's enough. It's fun chatting with you as you're driving on Route 66 across the United States, going through time zones. It's only 11 o'clock, 10 or 11 o'clock, somewhere out west, right? So it's like having a cup of coffee late at night with Jimmy. I still probably have 6 ounces of coffee in the bottom of this mug, which is probably at 120 degrees. Started out at 142, which is at the top end of what you can sip without burning yourself. All right, sports fans, you all have a nice. A little later today, I'll probably be on the air again talking about what happened with. You won't know until like 1 a.m. or 1:30 a.m. On Wednesday, because it takes them an hour or two to go through all, sort through all the numbers and figure out if anyone won or not. Yeah. So everybody's got a ticket with numbers on it. It has to compare to what the actual numbers are. And it has to go through millions of tickets. Hopefully, they got a fast computer system. All right, sports fans. Here's my disclosures and disclaimers. You can read that at your leisure. And this is the day that I started this broadcast. Now, it's actually the 14th, but I started on the 13th. I can't make these up in advance, so I just have to go with the flow here. So I have you have a great evening. If you're an insomniac, try to relax and go to sleep. I'm going to have some spaghetti. Not spaghetti. I'm going to have some fettuccine with my fine tomato sauce. And I think maybe tomorrow I'm going to upgrade the recipe for my spaghetti sauce. Yeah. I'm going to upgrade it. So you all have a great either early morning or very late evening. I'm kind of like working on the wrong end of the clock here. Yeah, take a little nap in the afternoon and I can stay up all night. No, I don't even have to go to sleep. I just stay up. You all have a great beginning of the day on the 14th. And we'll see later today or early tomorrow, what happened with this drawing, actually, if anyone won it or not. It's 290 million to one shot that no one will win. But there's 33 or 34 tries, so who knows? Maybe someone's going to get really lucky.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Came from the bottom, now the skyline know my name. Big wheels, big dreams, bigger bankrolls. You already know. I was broke. Now I'm riding a matte black ghost. I was broke, now I'm riding in a matte black ghost. Diamond wrist so cold, make the whole room froze. On the grain, on the dash, never checked the cost. Every loss was a lesson, now I move like a boss. Penthouse views while the city lights glow. Enemies watching every move through the window. I don't chase luck, nah, I create my own fate. Put the pressure on the game, now they all imitate. Money stacked tall like a skyscraper climb. Every second I'm alive, man, I'm making it mine. Got a fleet full of monsters in the screen when they start. Success ain't a destination, it's a state of my heart.
They said I never make another watching me rise. See the hunger in my soul, see the fire in my eyes.
No limits, no fear.
No breaks on this ride. I'm the king of my lane, got the world on my side.
I'm too damn.
Can't see the ground below.
Fast cars, fast life.
Watch the bankroll grow.
Middle finger to the doubt, let the whole world know.
I was built for this shit, now I'm stealing the show.